One thing about it is we do have a time frame that we're trying to stay under. But if you do have questions along the way, please ask those questions. But please keep in mind those questions may be answered throughout the presentation. So, but we'll do the best we can to answer some of those questions and kind of talk to you as far as about the questions that you do have. Demand 101, kind of the basics. The definitions for kilowatt hour, the amount of energy used over time. So that's the total amount of electricity that you would use. Kilowatt or demand is the rate at which energy is consumed at a specific moment in time. We see the example of the 5-gallon buckets. The consumption is the same of the 5 gallons that's filled up. But over here on the left, we have a spigot that runs at 1 gallon per minute, and on the right, we have 5 gallons per minute. So if you want to think of this either as a 1,000-watt light bulb versus a 100-watt light bulb, things like that. But again, demand is the measure of the rate at which energy is consumed at that specific moment in time. So we're going to use a couple of examples here. These are residential homes that we'll see. We have one on the left, one on the right. These are identical times, 6:15 in the evening. So the one on the left has a much higher demand. The one on the right has a much lower demand. So we'll see some of the differences there. The one on the left has electric resistance heat. This is your traditional heating unit that basically, when we talk about resistance heat, it's almost like a hair dryer. Those coils heat up, air blows over those coils, but we have to have energy to heat those coils up. So when we talk about a resistance heating, that's what we're referring to. The one on the right has a heat pump, much more efficient. We'll talk a little bit later that heat pumps can sometimes have a backup of resistance heating, which changes some of those characteristics. But typically, the heat pump in a normal cycle is going to be much more efficient. Electric oven versus electric range, dishwasher, water heater. So we see, those things kind of start adding up at that 6:15 time. So with the inefficiency of the resistance heating, we're getting close to demand of close to 20, 19.70. And with the heat pump and taking some of those things such as the dishwasher, the water heater, and some of those things maybe out of the equation during that time, the demand is much lower. Anybody have any questions about that? All right. So how does Ozark Electric measure demand? We measure demand in 15-minute blocks to determine an average KW. So within that 15-minute block, if you've got a 6 and you've got an 8, you've got a 6, you've got an 8. As far as that instantaneous KW, that instantaneous demand, the meter's always reading that. So if you have those two, then that 15-minute block is going to be a 7, the average between the two. That highest average is recorded, and it sets the meter's billed demand for that billing cycle, and that does reset at the end of each month. Why demand? Why did Ozark Electric implement the demand component? KMO, our power supplier, has billed Ozark Electric for our members, myself, demand for decades. We kind of looked back and tried to research as far back as we could of paying demand. And we came up at least 4 decades we've been paying demand, and maybe longer than that. So, demand has always really been a component of what Ozark Electric pays to our power supplier each and every month. We are billed demand for both a base demand and a peak demand. Peak demand is the 3 highest days in the winter and the 3 highest days in the summer. And those rates are set for an entire year. I know I was talking to Tori Morris today, and we set a peak in August as far as our peak demand. But with that time, August, we had some hot days, but was kind of a milder month with our kilowatt hour sales being down. But despite that being said, kilowatt hour sales were down as far as overall usage, but we still set that demand. And that's kind of what we see throughout the system, whether it's a distribution co-op, generation, transmission. So, you know, demand is something that's very important and talked about a lot as far as making sure there's enough demand to keep the power on.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
With regard to putting demand now out to the members, is it your intent or hope or goal that the member demand will decrease?
It is. Very good question. Yes. If we can decrease, we as a co-op, we as members can decrease our overall demand. It's less than what we'll pay to our power supplier.
I understand that. Did it decrease in August compared to what it might have been?
It's kind of apples and oranges at this point, as far as because we're still temperature dependent, and I have not seen those numbers. Tori, is that something that you can help us answer?
Yeah, I think in the next few months, once we have about 6 months of data, it'll be easier for us to track those trends. Right now, it's kind of hard to compare like an April to an August because those 2 months aren't really the same weather-wise. So once we have more data, we'll release that and put some of that into graphical form and lines to show you all how the demand has changed.
I hope you'll share that.
Yeah, we will certainly try. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of slides ago, when you were talking about the 18-minute increments, is that like start, for example, 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:15, always the same, or is it, okay?
No, it is the same. It is the same 15 minutes blocks, yeah. It doesn't, it's not like a 7:20 to.
So if I started my dryer at 8:10 and it runs until 8:30, it's in 2 15-minute blocks?
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question there. You talked about the data, show that. So will we get, we'll be able to see when our times that we're using, you're just doing it as a collection?
Mine will be collected. John may be able to, if you call in, John or Polly, our billing services manager, may be able to talk you through some of that. I have more collective big picture data, but for your home individually, I think we could look at that for you.
Yeah. Be more than happy. Our member services department. Yes, sir. Question in the back.
Now, regardless of whether we have a demand, we're still using the same number of kilowatt hours. Is that correct?
Regardless, if you're using, yes.
You bill us kilowatt hours.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And if we have a peak, say, I have a well pump that starts up and my heat pump starts, my hot water heater starts, that peaks, but I'm still paying the same number of kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
That measure, right?
For the whole month?
It is. Yes.
Why am I paying $3.75 per peak kilowatt?
Because that's what you're asking of the system. That's what we've asked of the system to produce. When we go out to your home and we design the system for your needs, we don't say, how many kilowatt hours do you think that you're going to need? We put a transformer in place for the demand that you're going to be asking of that. You know, when the engineers go out, they're going to ask you what the square footage is, what the heating and cooling is, things like that. If you build a shop building, are you going to have a welder? Are you going to have an air compressor? Are you going to have these different things? So that demand is really what's important when building this system and what it's based off of versus kilowatt hours.
Could you just increase our rate a little bit rather than charge us $3.75 per kilowatt rather than a kilowatt hour?
Yeah, we went to, again, to his point, we're trying to reduce the overall demand. This is how we're being billed from our power supplier. Demand has always been something that's been very important component. And as we'll cover, we now have the technology to read demand from all of our meters that are out there. All right. We'll take one more question. We're going to move along. Mr. Asher?
Yeah. At 15 minutes, well, I do math, there's 2,800 and some odd opportunities you got charges at kilowatt now in a month.
Okay.
Is that right?
Well, 2,000, yes, I'm not for sure, but yes.
Well, you get charged 3 days for the year, and we get charged 15 minutes. Why don't we get charged 3 days?
We end up paying that for the entire year. We're not able to reset at the end of August billing cycle or September's billing cycle. We pay that for the entire year.
And there's some things that I don't have control on, that causes electricity to peak, and that's a shared well that I own, that I don't charge the other parties any fee, because they're low income, and I'm low income too, I'm a disabled veteran. But
Okay. Well, let's talk about that shared wheel real quickly. What is the horsepower motor on that?
6 horsepower.
6 horse. Okay, so it does.
It's got a 20,000 kilowatt starting cycle and probably a 10,000
Yeah.
kilowatt
Yeah.
running cycle.
Yeah.
I don't use very much electricity, but I got charged 116% 1 month over what kilowatt hours I use.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Mis-
that don't hardly sound right.
Yeah.
116%.
Yeah, we have talked before about ways to lower your demand, and so
And
you.
on average, 82 or 87%, I
Yeah.
get charged every
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And my neighbor has a barn that has a separate meter,
Yeah.
and she has 3 fluorescent lights. And there's no peak to the lights when you turn them on, is there?
Everything that uses electricity.
Yeah. Every
I don't
electron.
understand, just for the lights, why she has a demand charge on top of that.
Because there's energy being delivered to that house.
So,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Okay. So again, 40% of our bill from KMO is billed in demand. Missouri co-ops have billed for demand since 2016. We have some of our co-ops to the north that have started charging for demand or a demand component back in 2016. We started looking here at Ozark Electric back in 2018. Just wanted to look at adding that demand component and what that would look like, and so we've worked since that time to make the decision to add the component of demand. All right, talking to you a little bit about what drives demand in your home. As Patrick had said, every electronic device in your home generates demand. A 100-watt light bulb or whatever is going to be very, very low demand. In most cases, your heating and cooling, if they are electric, are going to be some of your biggest drivers. But this is also your biggest driver for the kilowatt hours. Most of the heating and cooling are going to be around 55 to 60% of their overall makeup of a bill each month. And this is especially true with resistance type heating, those traditional air conditioning, traditional heating units, or something that's a backup to an air source. Other large users will be your dryer in your home, a water heater, whether it's a traditional electric or an on-demand. We have talked with some folks since this started. The on-demand water heaters are a lot of times a 35 kW water heater. All that electricity is used just immediately, all at once. Different things like that. And so, with that, that's going to be a demand driver. Also, ovens, are going to be able to drive demand, electric oven, and also a dishwasher. Some of those are lower. We're going to be able to take a look at those and kind of put some real numbers to those and such. Seasonal demand drivers include space heaters. A lot of times we use a space heater in a well. A lot of times maybe we use those in a room that's not heated as well. Sometimes getting ready of a morning. Those 1,500 watt, 2,000 watt space heaters are real electricity users, not only in using kilowatt hours, but also in the demand that they create. Engine block heaters, a lot of times folks have diesels and need to plug those in of a nighttime, so they can be something. Stock tank heaters, they use that resistance type heating, that coil heating, and also dehumidifiers. So again, we'll take a look at some real numbers, and I don't want you guys to think that I've got a dehumidifier in my home in my basement. It's not costing me $40 a month to run, so we'll take a look at some real numbers there. And I was talking with Anna Ely today. She's our member energy specialist, and we were talking about some equipment malfunction and failure that happens to result in higher demand. A lot of times we're going into the heating season. We've seen a lot of air conditioning, a lot of heating units that when you turn that heat on for the first time, you think, boy, it's not working very well. We've seen a lot of times where those units basically they're heating and cooling at the same time. We see that more than you would think. So there's obviously a system that's malfunctioning, not working correctly, and that's going to create a higher demand. Sometimes we have maybe a well that's been hit by lightning that's running continuously. Just some different things like that would be a malfunction that result in higher demand. All right, one of the things, and we'll get to see some real numbers here. These are kind of some averages and some different things like that. But we do have on our website demand estimator. And if I could get my mouse to work. Sorry, guys. Working earlier.
It worked fine.
Yeah.
And your cell phone was.
I may have to run this from the back. Close enough. We'll get too far away and it's not working correctly.
I have something, sorry, not sorry, but I don't know who you are. Could you introduce
Sure,
yourself?
yeah. John Davis, Manager of Member Services here at Ozark Electric.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Sorry, I may have forgotten that in the beginning. I apologize. Yes.
quick question. You were talking about, in reference to the demand charge, what happens if there's a power surge that goes across the lines, hits everybody on that line, and maybe it goes up to, I don't know, 25, 50 kilowatts? Are we going to get a bill for $3.75 times 50 or whatever it is?
Since we've not seen any issues like that. Like if lightning comes in or something, a lot of times we're talking about a tremendous amount of electricity. Now, I will say, like if you have an outage and you leave everything on and it kicks back on during that time, when everything maybe heats back up, the refrigerator's having to cool down and some things like that, that could result in. But as far as like a power surge, if you're having a power surge, we need to come out and take a look at some different things too. Now, I will say this, sometimes when we have our blinks that occur, so the way the system works, as far as the electrical system, and most systems are set up like this, like in your home when a fault occurs, let's say there's an overcurrent or something, it trips the breaker, you go down, you flip the breaker and it comes back on. The way the system works on Ozark Electric and many of the systems, it trips, then it's off for a brief moment, it comes back on. That allows time for something to clear, whether it's a squirrel that's out there, whether it's maybe something that's interfering with that, maybe a limb that's been blown into it or something like that, or even in a vehicle accident case, there's a momentary lapse where something can clear itself. So if it clears itself, it comes back on. If it happens 3 times, on the 4th time it goes completely out. So that's when a lot of times maybe it blinks a couple of times before the electricity comes back on. That's when that would happen. Typically there aren't surges involved during that, but everything does ramp up and come back on.
I've got a friend in Missouri that waits to do her dryer in a 2-hour window that's cheaper. And I've got a niece in Branson, Missouri that runs her kiln at a certain time of night because it's cheaper. I know that you guys haven't set a window. Is that something that might change in the future?
We always look at rates, and your board members will look at those rates. A lot of times those time of use rates are set up that's maybe something, for example, we'll say they have a time in the morning, let's say that's 6 to 9 in the morning, and maybe in the evening it's 4 to 9 or 4 to 8. So if you use within that window, your kilowatt hours are much more expensive, but sometimes you can get out of that block. What happens with those rates are, we found out that a lot of times those are being challenged right now because You know, you're dictating to most people that work a traditional lifestyle, whether they work at 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, or 9 to 5, or 8 to 4:30, or whatever that time would be. You know, most of us are home in the evening at the same time, and so, you know, we've got the air conditioning on, we're cooking dinner, we're doing these things, and some people just don't have the ability to go outside of that. So that's some of the issues that we do see with the time of use. But yeah, it's something that we've looked at, and again, our board of directors, general manager and staff, we look at rates each and every year and different things.
So if you decide to change that, it'll be, it's like once a year that you relook at things to say, let's put in a 2-hour window where it'll be cheaper to run a dryer. I mean,
You mean, well, this, what I thought you were referring to is just simply a block of time to where, you know, that block of time, it's more expensive from, or the kilowatt hours are higher from 4 to 8, different things like that.
Is there a block of time?
There is not, no. The block of time, you know, if somebody maybe works overnight hours and maybe they're 8 o'clock in the morning when they get up and get around and do these things, maybe that's their 6 o'clock in the evening to the rest of us.
The thing is, though, if we have no demand time to shorten our usage, when we do have a demand time that we are up, we are paying that the whole month. It seems like those windows of time that our kilowatts are higher are when we should pay the higher rate, not be forced to pay it through the whole month.
But again,
I'm sleeping at night, I'm using little.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be paying for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
higher rate.
What, are you meeting your demand in the middle of the night during that time?
We haven't checked
Yeah.
that, but I'm sure we're not.
Yeah, so,
Aren't you just moving the peak demand time from 1 hour to a different hour?
during the time of use, that's some of the issue with the time of use, because you have those shoulder, what we would call a shoulder peak. So maybe it is from that 4 o'clock in the evening till 8, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock in the evening. So now you have a peak at 9 o'clock that you've never experienced across the system, and you do have those. So that is a concern with the time of use, that you set a shoulder peak later on that you didn't anticipate. So lots of things to look at and consider when you talk about rates and those things. All right, Jennifer, we're going to take a look here real quick at the demand estimator. And so again, this is on our website and just some different things. Jennifer, you would click just the summer tab. Kind of gives us an idea. And guys, this may be hard to see, and I do apologize for that. So the air conditioner, it shows some different things. This is going to be a central unit. It shows that air conditioner is a 4 kW. We've also got the electric range on. That's going to be a 1.5 kW. We have a television that's on. That's a 0.08 kW. So we can scroll down and see the bottom here. So let's see what that total kW is for that. So if we scroll down, we can take a look at that. And we see that that's a 6.38 kW, and it does have the charge there. So what's that? Okay, I apologize. Can we turn off the light just a second?
You want to flip a light off, John?
Yeah. Does that help any? Yeah. So again, I do encourage you guys, this is on our website, and I do encourage you guys to go out there and take a look at that. And you can play with all these numbers. Let's say, for instance, we have a level 2 charger. We have some different options there, both a 30 amp and a 16 amp. So on the 30 amp, we see that goes up almost double, obviously, what the 30 amp is.
What is that for?
A charger, electric charger, for electric vehicle charger. Okay, so just lots of different things. We were talking about that tankless water heater. And again, you know, we kind of just had to use some numbers here on the tankless water heater. Go up one more, Jennifer, if you would. So those can be as high as a 35 kW system, and so when that tankless water heater would hit, it would be a 27. So we can obviously scroll to the bottom and take a look at what that overall usage would be. So it went from, we've added a couple of things, but it went to a 33 as far as the kW goes. So there are some things out there that can add, real numbers to the demand that's there. Lots of things that you guys would take a look at. I mean, anything that's going to use 220, 240 is obviously going to be higher. Air conditioning, dryer, dishwasher, electric stove, electric oven. We've already seen the example of LED television is going to be very little demand. The electric range is about a 1.5 kW. Electric oven is about 2.4, gets much hotter, more resistance heating that goes on there. So I do really encourage you guys to go out and take a look at our website and, play around with those a little bit. And again, they're estimations on some of it. As far as, your air conditioning may be a larger, if you've got a very large home, maybe you have 2 units or 1 really big unit. So, there can be some variation there. But it is a useful tool to kind of help you calculate your demand and things you can do to help lower your demand. Yes, sir.
So when there's no motivation to do this, because we don't get any break, there's no cheaper time for us to do that demand, what good is that estimator to any of us sitting in this room?
There is motivation. You can lower your overall demand in your home and pay less.
Don't cook? Don't stay cool?
Well, there are things that's going to be.
Shut your well off.
No. Every electronic device is going to use some type of demand. What we can do, and what I tell a lot of folks that would call into the office, it's July 18th. When I get home, my air conditioning is going to be on. I'm going to prepare a meal. The things I can do to help lower that demand is maybe I don't have to wash or dry my clothes during that period of time. And also, I can take, if we run the dishwasher, I can turn that dishwasher on before I leave or before I go to bed. That 10:30, 11 time frame. So I'm taking things out of that window. So, maybe my demand is an 11 and I can lower that down to a 9 or an 8.
But you said we don't have a window where the high demand is going to be. So how do we know when we can do this? I mean, if you don't give us a window.
It's a 15-minute block of time.
But that doesn't make any sense. I mean, 15 minutes every hour?
It is, yeah.
So how do we know what 15 minutes, so we have 15 minutes to do something, and then the 15 minutes kicks in again. And then we have 15 minutes and then it kicks in. Do that.
No, it is in a sense, but if you can take things out of that window, when we get home and it's really, really hot, that air conditioning is going to continue to run. As it cools down of an evening, that air conditioning is going to run less and for a shorter amount of time, hopefully. And so, that's when we would look at being able to take those different appliances and use them at that point.
So in a nutshell, really all I'm seeing is in the way to save money, is just don't run a lot of appliances.
Don't run, yeah. Instead of stacking your appliances like this, we're asking you to spread that usage out a little bit. Now, I understand, I'm not going to go with that air conditioning. Me personally, I'm not going to go without it. But again, there are some small changes I can do to help lower my overall demand. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding right. I used to run my washer and dryer at the same time, but now I've just started, I'll do a load wash. Then I'll run the dryer, but I'm not running them at the same time anymore.
Okay.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you have a little bit of differences too. With the washing machine, it's not going to use as much energy as the dryer does.
But don't run the dishwasher, the washer, and the dryer, and the oven all at the same time.
Exactly.
Start the dishwasher when I go to bed. It doesn't matter what time that is.
Yeah.
But while I don't have all that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly, yes, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I've called several times about this. I'm 82 years old. I don't use a dryer. I use my washer on cold water only. I've been trying not to run things at the same time, but if I am having, my air conditioner comes on and my well comes on, which I don't know when it's on and off, other than running water. I'm gonna be paying a higher rate for 15 minutes that I may not use the rest of the month. Is that right?
It is, it is.
So why am I getting charged this higher rate
Because
when
that's-
I only used it 15 minutes in the month?
Because we have to generate that electricity, whether you use it that one 15-minute time period or you
In a
use
whole
it
month?
continuously throughout the month. Yes,
And the rest of the month I use less?
yeah, yeah.
Paying for it with-
We're gonna do a demonstration outside.
Yeah.
But I think it'll help clarify some of that stuff.
We'll take one more question.
A little bit of problem with that because that has to level out a little bit. When she's just using a little bit of her 15 minutes, somebody else can utilize that. Why is she paying for the whole thing? Your system isn't working very well when you think about it that way.
Well,
When you pay for it because you have to buy it. But then you're also telling this person over here that's not using all of theirs that they have to buy it too, because you can't count on, I mean, there's an average there that you guys are missing.
But that's not how the nation's grid works. We have to, at Ozark Electric.
Have you been running in the red?
Do what? No, I'm trying to address the principle, okay? I've been trying to address the principle they're talking about. Because I don't want people to be confused thinking that it's all static and it moves from one place and needs it to another place. The electrons have to be on the line all the time. And what we've shown as a group, as an Ozark Electric membership, to our power provider, is that at any given time, this much electricity and this many electrons need to be available on those lines. Regardless of what people think, the electric lines aren't a battery. They're not storage. It's static. It's constantly needing to be generated. When we have blackouts or outages across the country, it's because generation stopped. There's no storage on those lines. So it's constantly needing to be delivered. So when we see what your demand is at your home, you're showing us this is the power requirement we need Ozark Electric to provide to my home 24 hours a day. I don't have the predictability, and neither do you. I understand why my power provider does it. I wish it was done differently, and that we could be billed differently, but I get why they do it. They have to expend the resources to create that energy to be on our system at all times. And honestly, what we have to do at Ozark Electric is we have to pay that demand bill every month, whether us as a membership use it or not, because they had to throw the coal in the fire to turn the electricity for us, or they had to open the gates at the dam and let it go, or they had to light the pilot light on the natural gas plant to burn the fuel so that it's out there and it can be utilized. I would love if the principles of electricity were different and the battery or the lines could actually be a battery. Then what you're talking about, drawing down when you need from all different places at different levels, it would be easier to meet that challenge. What's happening on the nation's grid, it's more troublesome than it's ever been to buy and sell electricity, and it's volatile. And it you know, I don't know where you're at for the election, but we're waiting to see what the election brings, because between the administrations in my time here at the co-op, I've seen that it creates different challenges or benefits based on what administration is taking care of unleashing the power that's on the grid or limiting what we can do. And until that is done in November, it's a big challenge, because we've got close to 70,000 megawatts of coal that's slated to be removed from the grid, guys. And as your general manager, that scares me to death. Because there's nothing that is 24 hours a day that's slated to be in its place. And so when I see our bill, our collective bill together, that we pay to Cayman, and I see those price determinants come to me, and the base demand component keeps rising, the peak demand component keeps rising, and kilowatt hour is not tracking at the same, they're sending price signals to us to figure this out. So we've watched across the country. We've watched to our neighbors to the west, our neighbors to the north that have introduced. We've got another co-op south of us that is starting to show demand on the bill because they're ramping up to go there. It will provide better stability financially for us to be able to manage your co-op by introducing this. And I know that it comes with pain points. It does. Every time we do a rate increase, I'm an Ozark Electric member too. I don't like it. We never have people that cheer for a rate increase. And that's what this is. It's a different component of doing that because we're seeing that demand, and our power provider is considering adding a third demand component to our Ozark Electric bill.
Like I say, one of my bills, 116%.
Right, and I'm sorry for it, I am. But this process will allow us to be able to move in a direction that keeps your co-op safe.
I talked to reference, I'm not a smart person, but I do find smart people talking. He said if this be an hour period or 2 hour period, it would not be, it level off. Average out less, not less.
Right, so, okay, so here's the deal. Okay, so this is what your directors are getting ready to do. Your board of directors are getting to, this month, we have our banker, who we do our business with, is going to come and present where we benchmark with other cooperatives, where we are at, what are our ratios, how well are we performing, what are we doing, which is good news. September, Associated, who generates a lot of the power for us, they decide as a board what they're going to do with rates, okay? So then in September, that goes down I-44 and it gets to Veneta, Oklahoma. It goes into the boardroom at KMO, who is our provider. And they will then craft what they're going to do for rates. And then I get that the second week of October, and I hustle it up I-44 to Mount Vernon, and we start laying out models. Is going to an hour average going to be what is best? Is going to a time of use and saying from 5 in the morning to 9 in the morning. If you do something inside that, you're going to pay. And some folks that are doing that is $5 to $5.80, $5.80 kW inside that block of time. We wanted to lower the $3.75 instead of being north of 5 and take off the reins and let you adjudicate and use your house any way you wanted rather than trying to put you into it. But if there's a sentiment that says, hey, listen, Ozark Electric, create for us a time, an on-peak and off-peak time, we will run that model as well and figure out what we should do that puts us in a good position to make sure that we're collecting enough revenue to take care of your co-op. That's the challenge. And yes, it can be done a myriad of ways. But what's happened over time is that we've had to do a shotgun blast and go with all kilowatt hours. Well, there's months where the weather doesn't behave very well for us, and we're lagging, and we're not selling kilowatt hours. And the demand component that I have to pay, it's $1.4 million every month for us as a family to pay our demand to KMO. And it doesn't reset every month like we selected to do with each of the bills that we have. We did a calculation, and in Ozark Electric pays for our demand January through December, and it doesn't change until they calculate for us a new number for the base demand and the peak demand, and then they publish that, and then we run it all 12 months. We have co-ops and utilities in the state that are doing that type of model where you don't get a chance to reset. And so we are right at the cusp of getting to the discussion of what we will do with rates. And then as soon as that's done in October, we give it 2 months because it's a lot to handle and it's a big decision to make. So by November, hopefully we've got that. December, we finalize the budget. So January is the announcement of what happens with rates. They either stay the way they are, like we've done in the past, or we announce at that time, hey, here's what we're going to do. And we like to pad 3 months and say, here's the rollout for that, January, February, March. It will take effect April 1. And and then we get down the road with whatever is decided by the board to do for rates going forward. So having somebody draw down something while somebody else isn't using, the grid doesn't care that I wish it did, because I'm tracking like you. I wish it did that, and it was a self-balancing agent, but it doesn't behave that way. It doesn't care if one of us is standing down and not doing much and somebody else is.
We were going to talk a little
I've
bit.
shown at my house, and I hit my peak like the third or fourth day of the month. And so it's in there, and the fallacy at first is that, well, I'm a 0, 0, 0, or I'm a 1, 1, 1, 1, and all of a sudden I went to nothing. That's not typically the behavior. Usually you're hovering around 7 or so, and then you have an event where stuff stacks, like the air conditioning in the well, or something else that's cycling in your home, and then it bumps you to that. I didn't do this. My wife deserves credit for it. She's a multitasker. And the 2 homes that we've lived in, off the kitchen is what? The laundry room. So you're preparing dinners, you're doing what you're doing, and then you run over to the laundry room and you throw in and do that kind of stuff. Okay, so having her understand what the principles are, and you nailed it right here. She decoupled that stuff. She built a new behavior on what she was going to do, and she tore it down and didn't stack those things and lowered our KW by 3.
But are you guys saying if you have one day, let's say you have company coming for a weekend, out of the whole month, that weekend you're doing multiple loads of laundry, you're cooking, you're doing this, and so it will bump up your average on that weekend, it'll change your entire bill for the whole month then? Is that what you're saying? In that example, so those one day, let's say one day where you're stacking and you're using everything at the same time as you have company. One day will bump up that average for the entire month.
Yeah, but if you add 3 KW, which is probably, you're probably not gonna add, you're not gonna double your KW most likely, but if you add 3 KW to have everybody over to your house, you've paid $12, less than $12, which is less than a McDonald's meal.
That's what mine did.
But just on that day, or is that now my average per month? Because I'm hearing
that's just that one month.
No. Yeah.
Reset every month.
No.
You get reset every
Yeah,
month.
correct. It's for that month. So
not that day.
so let's say it was Thanksgiving that you did this on. Yeah. So let's say the month of November. Let's say it ran from the 1st to the end of November. If you did set it because you had people coming over, a good example of this would be at my home. We have a wall oven that we never use until it comes time for something like that. The wall oven is 2.5, 3 kW. So yes, that would bump me up.
But like Christmas lights, like any of that stuff that is gonna, if you're using something even for that one day, your average for that month is all of a sudden gonna kick your bill away. So
Okay, you say kick your bill. You say again, we're not going from a 1 to a 12. If you quote unquote mess up and you have a higher KW, chances are it's only going to be by 1 or 2 or 3. It's not going to double itself. You're not going to go from a 9 to an 18. So if you needed to add LED Christmas lights, and even if you did quite a few strands of those, that demand is not going to go up very much during that period of time. The oven is 2.5 or 3 kW. So.
What about?
I'm sorry. This.
My question is, before you started the demand charge, you guys were paying, Ozark Electric was paying a demand fee to KMO.
Correct.
Which in turn, we had an increase on our electric bills because of our usage. So we, as a customer, were help paying that demand fee already.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to be paying that demand fee on our usage, plus we're being charged more for this demand charge. Is that correct?
So we're paying so much.
Yeah. When the rate was calculated, we lowered the KWH rate. It went from 9.7 to 8.9, so we did lower that when we did implement demand. One of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot is with that big pie of kilowatt hours. So let's just go back to the traditional rate. It was all kilowatt hours. This gentleman here has an 8 kW. Neighbor here has a 20 kW. They were paying the same rate. Those kilowatt hours were the same rate. Now, the system that we have now, if you're truly an 8, you pay for an 8, and if you're a 20, you're going to pay for that 20 that you would use from the grid and ask from the grid each and every month. So, you know, that's some of the motivation to go to that rate is to, you know, make things equal. You're no longer supporting your neighbor for their higher demand, their higher KW.
But they were paying for that 20.
They were paying a higher rate
Yes.
because of, but the ones that were paying an 8 maybe didn't have to pay an 8. So they're decoupled somewhat from just a straight KWH or kilowatt hour usage rate.
But across the board, does it not balance out? Because they are still paying, I live by myself. I don't use a lot of electricity, but still yet I'm paying $40-something a month in this demand charge. Over and above what I was paying this time last year, my bills have went up. Most of the time, people live in the same pattern of like their usage is during the day. I understand that all of these electrons have to be on the grid at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's still the same.
You're saying it's the same electricity. Is that what you're saying? And so the thing about it is, again, that's what you're asking us to produce. Whether it's that 15-minute time period or whether it happens throughout the month, you know, that's what you're asking of the grid to produce during that amount of time. You know, again, when we go out and we look at your home and we're sizing your home for a new service or things like that, you know, we're looking at how much KW, how much demand you're going to have versus how many kilowatt hours will be sold to that. You know, everything is based upon that to make sure that the electricity provider has enough to supply your home, whether again it's that 15-minute time period or whether it's, you know, 25 times throughout the month. Guys, we really do need to kind of move along here. We've got more things to cover.
Because we're going to go out to the work.
We are.
And see a 2 different size generators, try and meet the load, and do an example of what we're seeing on an illustrated model of what the entire grid and what Ozark Electric is trying to be to meet the challenges with that. So we'd like to, because that's the funnest part of it.
Yeah. So we're going to go through a couple more things really quickly here inside, and then we'll go out and take a look at that. We're going to go through this super quickly. We've already talked about these ways to lower your demand. Avoid running multiple appliances at the same time. Maybe that dishwasher goes on before you go to bed. That's what I do at my home. Dry your clothes at a different time when other appliances are running. Avoid considerable variation in your thermostat. You know, if you're somebody that turns that thermostat up to 84 when you leave the house and then you turn it back down to 72, it takes a long time for it to catch up. It has to get the humidity out of your homes and different things like that. So I don't know, really, that may not be advantageous to you to do if you can keep that thermostat a little bit closer to what your comfort level is. Also, look into energy efficiency, energy efficient appliances, and we have some rebates and resources available through Ozark Electric. Anna Ely, our energy specialist, member energy specialist, is going to go ahead and talk to you about those. Whoops. Whoa. Going to go ahead and talk to you about that. So I'll let Anna speak to you about that.
Hello, my name is Anna Ely, member energy specialist. A lot of what I do has to do with our rebates programs. Jennifer, do you think I can run that from up here now? Or do you just want to scroll?
It's hard to hear you without a mic.
Okay, I'll talk really loud. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll yell it. Okay, so we do have some rebate programs available to our members. These are things that can help with energy efficiency in your home. And so we'll quickly go through some of the rebates, but the one thing that I do want to spend some time talking about is our home energy audit program. I see a couple of people in the room who have already had it done, and myself included. It's a great program. So let's go through the rebates first, and then we'll talk about the home energy audit. I got nothing. I don't want to work. No. I'll give it back to you. You can scroll for me. Okay. So the first set of rebates that we have are for heat pumps. This is your HVAC systems. So the first one that we have is the air source heat pump. So that will be a heat pump with an electric backup. Now we understand that having an electric backup can drive a demand. However, in the long run, typically if we don't have extreme weather, that would allow for those heat strips, your backup heat strips to kick on. It can be more efficient, and it is more efficient than having just that straight electric resistance heat. So we have air source rebate is $150 per ton. If you want to get into the eligibility requirements and some of the things that you'll need to know about the system before you install it, go ahead and go to our website, find the rebates page, and read through that kind of fine print stuff. We also have mini splits, same rebate program as the air source heat pump. It's just kind of one of those smaller one room or smaller homes that those can be used for. And then we also have the dual fuel heat pumps. Those operate the same as an air source heat pump would, but the backup when we get into those extreme cold temperatures is gas, so propane or something like that. And then if you'll scroll back up to the very top, I skipped past the geothermal. So the geothermal rebate for a new installation is $750. Geothermal in the beginning can be much more expensive to install, but it is considered a renewable, and there are tax credits available for those as well. So it essentially takes the heat from the ground or the cool air from the ground, brings it into your home and conditions your home in that way. So that's how it's considered a renewable resource, and it's available for some of those tax credits as well. And that's something that you can talk to your tax preparer to kind of understand a little bit more of that program. We also have an advanced thermostat rebate. So that would be a programmable thermostat. If you install one of those, it's a $50 rebate. Air conditioner rebate, if you have a window unit that you need to have installed, there's a $50 rebate for that. We also have a rebate for heat pump water heaters. We actually put some metering equipment on a heat pump water heater that one of our members has in their home, and it was the KW on that system was minimal. So it is much more efficient than your traditional electric water heater. And so with that, there's a $500 rebate. So lastly, well, I'll go over this first. Electric charger rebate, there's a $250 rebate on that. And then scroll back up to home energy audit. We'll talk about this just a little bit. I love this program. We work with OCAC. They have a state certified home energy auditor on staff that we contract with to do our home energy audits. He'll come into the home and do a full inventory of the size of the home, your windows, everything that he sees. Then he'll put the home under a vacuum with a blower door that can show you where you have deficiencies in your air sealing or your ductwork or your HVAC. He's going to look at everything. With that, you'll come away with a packet of information, a work order that will show you what can be done in your home to help with that. Anything that you complete on that work order, keep your receipts because we have a $750 rebate for that as well. And so we've seen a lot of people go through that. Unfortunately, for some reason, not a lot of people fill out the rebate paperwork and get their money back on it. And so I'd like to see a lot more people utilize that program.
Hey, Anna?
Yeah.
Just because you said OCAC, can anybody get a home energy
Yes.
audit?
Yes. We just use their auditor. There's no income eligibility requirement for this program at all.
How often can you have that done?
As often as you would like to. It's $75. So typically, they charge $350 for that rebate, or for that audit to be completed. We take care of most of that. We just ask that the member pays $75. Anything else?
One thing I'll say about the home energy audit program, we've done hundreds of these since we've started. I've never had a member come to me during my time and say, you know what, I don't think this was really worth the money I invested, and it wasn't beneficial. You're going to find out things about your home you didn't know before. You're going to find out where those airflow systems, maybe where there's some air loss and some different things like that. So really beneficial. I do encourage folks. And again, Anna talked up to a $750 rebate on that. So if the auditor comes back and says, you need more insulation in your attic, if you spend $1,500 on that list of recommended measures, we'll rebate $750 of that back to you. So, yeah.
Yep. Anything else? Yeah. If you'll just go, I may sit back there and if you don't mind, to just kind of talk about it.
Okay. Guys, we'll talk real quickly about the new bill format and Smart Hub. You guys may have noticed in August there was a new bill that's out there. Hopefully it has a good look to everyone, and there's more information, but we wanted it to be clean. We've been told for a while now that we needed to change that format. And so NISC, who does all of that billing and things and information for us, they would no longer support what we had. So that was a reason for the change. Some different things I just wanted to add. A lot of times we put some information out there on Facebook, and I understand not everybody's on Facebook, but we may say the Midway substation feeder 7 is without power right now. So you can look at that bill and you can say, okay, I'm on the Midway substation and I'm on feeder 5. So that doesn't affect me. So we've added some new things such as the feeder. Also, what board district you're in. Board districts 1 through 9 are now on the bill. So if there's ever any questions about those different things. And then we also added not only the KWH, but also the KW here to kind of see what those historic trends are. So that is our new bill look. We hopefully it's meeting our members' needs with some more information.
I would really like to see that 15-minute period when it occurs.
Yeah, that time stamp of that.
Yes.
Yeah, and we are, and I understand, we are working with our software NISC to be able to get that. We're not quite there yet, but it's something that we do work towards.
Be on the bill or Smart Hub?
We would hopefully have that information in both places. Yes, sir.
So since we went to demand, I've mapped out, I have to have a clamp on ammeter on the system to look at how my house is doing, okay? So I can measure all the appliances, the major appliances there. It's been eye-opening to look at that. And I've got all the things done that you guys are suggesting. One thing that's missing, even though you have a demand estimator, is we don't see real time what's happening. And every one of us would make a decision differently if we knew that if I flick this switch and suddenly I see an additional 5 kilowatts going on. You have it at the meter, don't you? You have it at the meter.
Yes, sir.
We don't have it inside the house where we make those decisions.
Yeah.
So if you would, I'd be happy to share my data from my house that I've mapped out. If you could find a way to give us a simple meter that shows us what our kilowatt hours are, or a total for the month, or the peak, anything like that, so it's real time inside the house, I think we would all help you and help us keep the rates low.
Are you using like an Importia type system or
A clamp on meter that measures.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there's some different ones out there. So yeah.
I know I'm talking technical stuff, but you have it at the meter, you measure it, but we don't see it real time in our house.
Sure. Yeah. And we're trying to get our information better. We really are as far as what's there.
So you know what I just said to you? we don't have the real-time information in our house where we make those decisions. We can make the choice to do that, but so many of our implements, or so many of our things that we have, like our furnace, I don't see the real-time demand on that going on. And do I choose to cook now or in 15 minutes? So it's not a fantastically, it's been on the market, but we need the opportunity to look at a device that we can all, in real time, make those decisions based on what you guys are seeing in real time. Makes sense?
It does, yes. Yeah.
Hi. The lady back there said that she's single and her bill, her high demand charge is around $40. We're a family of 4 and ours has been averaging 50 to 60 a month thus far. There was a lady back there that asked if you were operating in the red to make such a huge increase for each family. If we're paying 50 to 60 more a month, she's paying 40 a month, and you're not operating out of the red yet. How long will this go on before we can, if things go well in the election, can this come down? This is not set in stone.
Two things I will say to that is, number one, is yours and the other person's may differ from myself. We did lower the kilowatt hours, and so at my home, and I could just speak for myself, during this time of year, we use quite a few kilowatt hours as far as what that air conditioning running for those warm periods of time, hot periods of time. My demand's around a 13. So my bills are very similar, if not lower than they were last year. So I don't, and each month may be a little bit different. So what was in August of this year, my bill was actually cheaper than it was in August of last year. So those are some things to consider before that goes.
We have our adult children still living at home because what kind of kid can afford their own house nowadays? But, you know, they all do their laundry at times I don't even know.
Yeah.
And there's really no way for us to, you know everything that's going on. If one daughter's doing laundry and the other daughter's doing something else at any given time.
Yeah.
My question is, if things look better in the future than they look right now, this is not set in stone. It can be reduced at some point.
Yeah.
And you look at this once a year.
We look at it throughout the year, but that's when we have the real numbers. When Patrick alluded to, going to KMO and getting those numbers. So each year in the boardroom, we come back and we say that's when a decision needs to be made and start formulating. We look at things throughout the year. So and again, Tori had mentioned we're just on about 6 months of data now on this system, so we've not been through a complete year. Most people's April bills are going to look a lot different than they are than their January bill and their July-August bill.
Let's just say that most people are like me and not like you. And let's just say that there's a lot more revenue coming in, more than what's needed.
Yeah.
So then we would be given relief at some point.
Yeah. We would take a look at that for sure, whether that would be in the form of a rate abatement that we did back in 2020, capital to credit retirement, or maybe even a change in those rates. It was something that would be looked at for sure. Okay, we're going to go real quickly, and Anna's going to show us a little bit of as far as Smart Hub, and hopefully you guys are utilizing the Smart Hub app on your phones, on your on your computers, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that.
I'm going to drive from back here because the computer is back here, so I hope you all can still hear me. One thing I do want to mention to you with Smart Hub, I know a lot of people use the app. The app is a good resource for a quick view for the day, to go in and pay your bill, but if you really want to dig into your data, you're going to want to get on a desktop browser version where you can really look at the Usage Explorer. So that's what we're going to look at now. If you don't have access to Smart Hub and you want to be able to see your data and use the other features within this, I will have my laptop over here and we can get you enrolled today. So after we are done, just come find me over there in the corner and we'll get you signed up. So I'm going to take you to kind of the way that you would get to Smart Hub. So you're going to go from the home page of ozarkelectric.com. You're going to hit Pay Bill, and you're going to log in from here. So this is my account. We're just going to use it so you can see the Usage Explorer. So to see usage, you're going to go to Usage Explorer.
Is that any better, guys?
Yeah.
I know it's a little hard to see, and we can do some one-on-ones if you have questions about how it works. So if you want to see both your KW and your KWH, you're going to use this drop down here. And you can select both KW and KWH. So you're going to see a line here that shows both. You can hover to see what both values are. I have it set to monthly. You can also go into your daily values. And then you can also see your interval data, which is your hourly data. Now the hourly data will only show your KWH at this point. And eventually we'd like to see, like we talked about, having more of an instantaneous or having a little bit more information for that KW there. It's just going to take some time to have that built out. We work with a multitude of software. It's about 3 different softwares that we work with to provide this data to you. And so it's kind of always moving, and we want to see more utility come out of that for you. And so we are improving it all of the time. So do you have any questions about how this works specifically? So I also wanted to talk a little bit about looking at that monthly data. Just kind of looking in, you can look through your daily data to see, what you've used, kind of think back about the days that you've had those higher usage. You can also look at what the temperature curve was kind of doing for that day. And if you're, if it was hot outside, cold outside, what the temperature was doing to affect the way that your HVAC was running, which would also affect the way that you use power in your home. And so if you would like to get signed up for this today, or even if you just, have forgotten your password or need help getting signed in, I can help you out with that as well.
All right, guys, I think we're ready to go outside. Ryan Post, district board member in District 5, is going to walk us through, along with Drew Meier, one of our meter technicians, going to show us kind of when we add to that load real time. We're going to be using some generators to do that. So we want to go outside and take a look at that demonstration. Love for you to be able to show you guys that.
Every day, along with the chip and the equipment at the substation that takes to do that. So with that, we've made some adjustments on these meters here to hopefully show you guys what is actually happening when you turn things on at your house.
So if you think of this in a different scale, right? We've scaled down what's happening. So we actually have a small generator over here. We're going to start that in just a second, okay? We have and it's only a 2,000 watt generator. So that's a 2 kW. So if you think about, hey, my house is a 10, okay? You're 5 times the size of what that generator can provide. So I want you to think of that, though, as Associated. That's the Associated, our generation company that's generating electricity. This extension cord, although it looks very barbaric in compared to what KMO offers us. That's KMO. It's taking it from the power plant and it's bringing it all the way to what we're going to call Ozark Electric Cooperative. We're going to call just the meters themselves the Ozark Electric Cooperative, because we're going to take it from the distribution that's coming to these meters, and then we're going to distribute it to your home. We're a distribution co-op, and we want to think of the meter or the panel, the load center, and these receptacles as your home. And then these are the appliances. We took the easy way out because it's easy to make load with resistive heat. So we chose some resistive heat load. We also chose a motor load to kind of give you an example of kind of what things are doing in your home. Now again, these are on a smaller scale, so whenever you think about your house, if you think about your furnace, it's going to be much, much larger than what these are. But what I want to demonstrate to you, first off, when we get started, is that demand matters, because when we don't account for demand, when we haven't prepared ourselves for demand, we can kill our generation. And so what you're going to hear is you're going to hear this generator run. It's going to be loud, not super loud. It's a pretty quiet generator, but you'll hear it rev up and make different noises. We're actually going to turn this light bulb on. I had to steal a light bulb from my wife because it was the only incandescent light bulb that I can find in the county anymore, because they don't make them hardly anymore, okay? And so I got this incandescent because I want you guys to see the fluctuation in the electricity as we're putting load on it. And really what we're doing is what in the industry we would call a brownout. When you see that voltage drop, what's happening is if you see your lights flickering and stuff, we have demand being put on the system that's putting pressure on the system, and whenever you see that, that's voltage dropping going on. So I wanted to demonstrate for you to be able to see that. Plus, it'll indicate when we do actually kill the generator. We're gonna overload the system real fast, and then we're going to start the other one out there, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the metering. But what we're also going to demonstrate is that demand matters, because this one will hold the load that we're going to ask it to. It'll carry the demand. This system, only a 2 kW system, will not. Okay? And so, real fast before I get into that, I want to show you something. If I show up to wire your house, okay, and who in here thinks kWh is the most important thing? That kWh is how it ought to be? We ought to figure it on kWh. Nobody? I heard that in the other room. Okay. So if I showed up to your house and you say, hey, all I care about is kWh, and I say, hey, how many kWh do you use? And you say, hey, not very many. You say, I'm just a system average. I'm 1200. I'm just 1200 kWh. And I'd say, oh, okay. Well, if you're just 1200 kWh, that's only 6.9 amps on average all month long. So if we only care about this wire will carry 10 amps. That's a 10 amp wire. Now, if I build your home with this, you will own my home, because I will be negligent and held liable for burning your house down. And so, whenever we think about that demand is not a feature that matters, that it's unfair and it doesn't make any sense, what I'm telling you is that because we have become accustomed to what a kWh offers, right? Because it's a system that we were comfortable with, and people are always resistant to change, and I can get behind that. I'm the same way. I don't like email, right? I don't even like cell phones. I got one in my pocket, but I don't like it. But we're resistant to change because it was something that we were used to. kWh was something that we grew accustomed to. And I even had people tell me, well, give us kWh, we understand it. And then I'll ask you, how do you figure it? And the room grows quiet. Right? You, sir, you figured out your demand. Right? You figured out your demand at your house by putting a clamp meter. It's pretty easy to measure demand, actually. But to actually measure kWh, you've got to take the curve of the demand, and as it moves up and down, up and down, up and down, Ken, our resident PE, can figure it, but I don't know if you guys are probably smarter at math than me. But then you've got to figure the area that's underneath that demand curve over time. That's how you calculate kWh. And so if we build a system strictly based on kWh, you get a system that looks like this. When truthfully your home, if you're a 200 amp home, it says, I need this. Now you can tell just very easily that there's a big difference in those two things. And so none of you, while you would say, hey, I believe in kWh only, none of you actually believe that, because your home, most likely, if you have a 200 amp panel in your house, which is probably close to our system average, even though we have some older 100 amp homes, but we have some much larger than that. Your home's probably fed with this. And so you've demonstrated in a short period of time that, hey, demand matters. Now it may be foreign to us, but it's real and it's true, and you've demonstrated your own self that it matters. Now the other thing, for those of you who, Marlis and I had a great conversation the other night. What we talked, Marlis, for an hour maybe? I mean, it was a long time.
And I talked to my sister.
Yeah. So I walked outside, and I walked out in my shop, and I talked to Marlis, and made some tea. No, but we were talking about, you know, what's at stake with our environment. And the thing I would say is that whenever we understand what demand really means, we become more friends to the environment too. We say, you know what, because the generation has to exist, because we have to build a system that can carry it, if we can all lower our demand, what we tell our generation company is, hey, the assets we currently have online can last longer, even though we've added 400 or 500 meters to our system this year. We no longer, if we can drop our demand as a system, we no longer go to Associated and say, hey, we need you to add more generation this year. What we say is, hey, we've lowered our demand as a system or as individuals, but maybe the system demand didn't really drop, but we've added 400 homes and we stayed static for a year. And all of a sudden we begin to do our part as a co-op by dropping our demand, each of us individually, as we are concerned about the future, right? And so as we look at what's coming and we look at the things that are going to happen, we ought to be concerned about the generation and the stuff that's to come. And we ought to say, hey, you know what, I understand that my demand does matter, and even though it's a little bit uncomfortable for me to have to think about it, and I know, like you mentioned, I got adult kids at home, it's like,
They're home when we're not.
hey, you guys, knock it off, right? I mean, you know what I do to my daughter? I have a 13-year-old daughter. I go in her room, and when she leaves lights on, I steal light bulbs out of her fan. And I walk out. She currently has 2 of her 4.
Good job.
Hey,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I care. So, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on. We don't want to run it very long because it is going to make some exhaust. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, we've got a lot of air in here, so it's not unsafe, okay? But if you are sensitive to that, just be aware. We are going to make a little exhaust. It is going to be a little bit loud. I'm a pretty loud talker, as you can tell. We're going to talk about that real fast, and then we're going to unpack a few things, and hopefully you guys will leave here really enthusiastic about electricity, right? All right, let's go. Okay, so you see the light bulb come on. It's good and bright, and we're generating electricity, right? Hey, thank goodness for Nikola Tesla that you don't have to listen to one of those outside your house. Okay, that's AC current for you. Praise Jesus, glory, hallelujah, that you don't have one of those and you're on DC current at your home, okay? Otherwise, you would never get outside the hum of the generator. So, we've got that. Now, what we're going to do is, right now, this is an instant KW. That light bulb is a .061. That's a 60-watt light bulb is what that tells me. This is pulling 60 watts right now. Okay, it's a .061 KW. That gives you an idea. Think of that in the macro scale. That's all your lights in your house right now. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start turning stuff on, and you're going to hear the demand. You may even see the light bulb dim, and you're going to hear this thing start to struggle a little. Okay? So here we go. We're going to turn on a heater. Maybe. I'll turn this one on. That one doesn't want to come on. There it goes. Hear it? Hey, Associated! Crank it up! Ozark Electric's coming, right? We're putting demand on the system. That's demand. Now, the other thing that's interesting is we're a 1.5 kW. But you know what? We haven't even sold a kilowatt hour yet. You know why? Because an hour hasn't passed. But we've been telling Associated and KMO, bring the bacon. We need it. Right? We're putting demand on the system. We can't stop now. We're making demand. Now these things are starting to go. Okay? Now let's turn this. Let's see. I got to get the right one. Now we're going to turn another one on. Just going to turn the fan on to start with. Okay? Here we go. Here's 7. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Look at my light bulb dimming. See? Demand matters. If I don't have enough to meet the demand, all of a sudden, oh man. We killed it. We killed it. You guys can shut that off. Because we said, hey, all we care about is KWH. Here's the thing. If I took your guys' bills and I took all the KWH and I averaged it out across the entire month and I called up to KMO or we called up to Associated and said, hey, that's all we'll need.
Clint.
We're off. We're all in the dark. We're all in the dark. And guys, I understand because I'm one of those people. I'm probably a lot like you guys, except for instead of grown children, I have cows. And they will drink at the most least opportune times. And turn the well on. Right? And then they don't use that much KWH, actually. I mean, my bills are relatively low, except for they set a demand. But what I'm telling you is that we don't have any choice but to capture that demand. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I may be stealing the thunder, but I feel like we've been here a long time. Where's my black marker? Oh, it's in my pocket. It's my first day. Here's the thing about this. And we're going to turn that other generator on, and it's outside where you don't have to listen to it as bad. You hear it? Came on. But here's the thing. I want you guys to think about this, okay? This is the piece of pie, right? This is our pie. And you heard somebody say, I think Patrick in there said, it's a $1.44 million pie. That's what the demand costs the co-op every month. $1.44 million. Now you guys are all members. Who in here's got more than 1 meter? Anybody got more than 1 meter? Okay. So let's play this game. If collectively, if we're all in this together, right? Number one, we got to quit thinking about Ozark Electric as its opposite, as its own entity. That it's all of us together. That because we're really just billing ourselves, right? Does that make sense? We all just bill ourselves. But if we got to come up with $1.44 million collectively, do we do it by the 37,000 members? Do we take that 1.44 million and just divide it by 37,000 and just send bills to all 37,000, or excuse me, 37,000 meters? Do you guys want to do that? I mean, what about those of you who are lower than whatever that equals? Or how about this? How about there's roughly 27,500 members. Do you want to just take that 1.44 million and just divide it by 27,500? Because I'm going to venture to guess that for a lot of you, that number would be larger. You see, what we did whenever we went to demand rate billing is we sliced this pie for the size that you told us at your home exactly what piece of pie you wanted. And we gave you the option to tell us what size pie you would like for that to be. Now, it may be inconvenient to try to whittle that pie down. Maybe you're going a little bit on a diet, right? I'm going to back off a little bit. But what we've done is we've given each person the opportunity to say, this is my slice of the pie. And so the person that's a 20, right? They pay a 20. The person that's an 8, they pay an 8. Whenever it was all bundled together in a KWH price, what those of you who were 8s said to the people that was a 20 was, hey, I like you so much. You're like my favorite person. You just send your electric bill to me. I've been wanting to pay your electric bill my whole life. But the other side of it is, those of you that were 20s, whenever you balked at the fair size piece of pie, and I may step on some toes here, what you said is the people on our system that are 8, you owe me. You owe me for being on your system and being your neighbor. You owe me to the tune of 12 kW. And so the important thing to think about when you think about this demand rate is not that it became some huge collection deal, because we've never collected. Is Tori here? Hey, Tori, Tori, have we ever collected 1.44 million
No.
on demand? We've never collected the whole 1.44 million with the demand rate. Now that doesn't mean we've been operating in the red, right? There's been lots of misnomers about things that have been going on. But what we've done is we've softened the blow that we all create of the $1.44 million in such a way that we all pay our fair share. And truthfully, as a co-op, as a cooperative principle of community, we ought to all be proud to pay our own share. And so that's what happened here. We didn't want to do this, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to make somebody pay for me I've got 4 meters with wells. Well, guess who gets a break on this? I do. And many of you, this would hurt you more. And so yes, bills went up. Right? Bills increased, but that's because we took a billing increase from across the board, from Associated to KMO, and it made its way down to us, and we were operating thin line, and whenever we took a billing increase, we didn't have any choice but to move. And what we decided to do was to uncouple how you're purchasing your electricity, to uncouple how you take your electricity from a strict KWH, where somebody who's a 20 takes advantage of somebody who's an 8, and it goes across the board, and we said, hey, we'll all pay for our piece of the pie. We'll all play our part in the community, right? Hey, if you're a doctor, be a doctor. If you're a dirt mover, be a dirt mover. If you're you know what I'm saying? We all have our role to play, and when we slice the pie evenly based on what each of us are asking for, all of a sudden we get away from these crazy ideas of this. And a strict KWH that just lumps it all together, and now all of a sudden I'm subsidizing or somebody's subsidizing me. I don't know about you, but I'm okay with, are you guys all right with being fair and honest? I'm not.
Fair and honest would have been a $10 or $20 a month increase.
Well, so here's the thing.
Not a 60.
So here's the thing. So think about that for just a minute. Here's something that we've done. Here, I've got the numbers to prove it.
I clean houses for a living. If I were to raise my clients 20-25% all at once, I would be fired from every house that I clean.
I hear you. But I can push back on you on that.
Okay.
So there's a couple things that happen when you're a cooperative, right? Well, we buy from cooperatives. And so there's things called deferred revenue. And so there was deferred revenue, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. Steve's president of the board, and he's on the board at KMO as well. But there was deferred revenue setting aside at KMO. And one of the things that nobody saw coming, okay, was how fast that whenever we see what KWH is doing, and by the way, I'll talk about this all night, so if you guys, it doesn't bother me a bit to talk about electricity. But whenever you see KWH has been doing this, okay? Our KWH sales over time look like this. They're pretty flat. Our KW demand has done this. And so when you say the increase, right, there's a 30% disparity between this number. This has increased at roughly, it's not quite 30%. I think this increased at 80% from 2018 to now, and this increased at 34% from 2018 to now. And so we had that very increase you're talking about, and as we keep running away with demand, and as demand keeps outpacing KWH sales, here's what happens. KWH price has to go up even more. And what happens is, it becomes less and less fair for those who are subsidizing the other group. So if we increase KWH only, the fact that we have to recover a 30% disparity between these two in order to recover that money, what it does is it forces the bottom end people who are low KW users to subsidize the top end who are high KW that drive that peak demand number. It forces them to subsidize them even more. And so what it does is it begins to drive a wedge that we have to find a way to close. Here's the numbers for you. This is an interesting deal. This goes back to the wire deal. If you use, this will blow your mind. If you're a 48 kW, okay, and you use it all around the clock, 24/7 for a 30-day month, okay? That's 34,560 kW. And this is a big demonstration just to prove to you what we did with the KW versus the KWH that it would have taken to recover that amount, okay? Because this is a 48 kW house, so think about that. That's what we would call maybe a bad actor. Somebody's a multi-millionaire, they got a huge mansion with 28 air conditioners, right? 14 water heaters. How come when the houses get so big, they get more bathrooms than bedrooms? I never have understood. It's got 14 bathrooms and 7 bedrooms, okay? So, believe it or not, at a 48 kW, it's only $180 for the KW charge, okay? That's at our current billing rate. It would be $3,075.84 at a KWH rate at 8.9 cents per KWH, which is what our current billing is, for a $3,255.84 total on KWH and KW. Now, if you go the other way and go, hey, I just want KWH, the estimate, and we don't even know that because we kind of played with it a little bit, but a preliminary estimate if we went straight KWH was 12.5 cents. If you go straight 12.5 cents at 34,560 kilowatt hours, it's $4,320. It's $1,100 more. And so what I'm saying is that as this grows, the subsidization becomes even worse. The further this disparity gets, as demand outpaces KWH, as KW outpaces KW, this gets even worse for the people who are doing their part to be the best co-op member they can be. And we're not saying you can't use electricity, but what we are saying is that everybody's going to pay their fair share. So, I want Drew to talk about meters, and then we can come back to some stuff, and then I'll stay here and answer questions all night. Go ahead, Drew.
So some people, a gentleman asked earlier about wanting to know what's actually happening in your house. Your meter should look like this one here. It's going to flash KWH and KW. You can take a simple magnet, and if you swipe it over the top, it goes into what we call diagnostic mode. Get it over there just right. Oh, come on. Seriously? You're going to do this to me in a demonstration. All right, this meter worked for me. So it'll say alternate. It'll show all the numbers. The next thing it'll do, it'll go into KWH. Then it'll scroll through to KW, which is your demand that you've set on that meter. Now here's the next one. It'll say IKW. That is the instantaneous demand you're pulling at that point. That doesn't mean that's your peak. You might be hitting 10, but in that 15-minute window, you might average out to an 8. Then it goes to IPA, which is amps on the left side of the meter. And then also IPC, which is amps on the right side of the meter. Ignore the IN. And then the last thing it'll do is show you volts. This is 237 volts on here. So again, if you're curious what your house is doing and you want to know right now, like a simple magnet, swipe over the top will show you that. So a couple things, like I said, I've been a lineman for several years. We've showed up to trouble calls where a person has a 100 amp meter base. They might only use 700-800 kilowatt hours in a month. That's low. But what they could do is they might have a couple space heaters running, something's froze, and we show up in the middle of the winter when it's cold and they have burned up that meter base. KWH doesn't burn things up. Load does. That's KW. That's the capacity you're asking for that meter base to provide. In a 100 amp meter base, it's melted the jaws and the member has to replace that base. So that's an example I want to show you. That's the demand you're putting on your system. That's what matters, the amount of load. Yes?
Just a quick question. If we do that diagnostic at home, and will it default back
Yes.
on its own?
Yes.
We don't have to do anything?
It has a set roll through, so once you go through and you see the voltage, you walk away from it, it's going to go right back to where it was.
Will it hurt to do that every 15 minutes for a few?
If you want to walk outside your house every 15 minutes and do that, be my
And we've
guest.
had people do that. We've had people go out there, swipe it, somebody's in the house turning something on, and they're on the phone going, all right, that's a 3.5, you know? So feel free to do that.
So what that's going to do is show the appliance that you're running at that time. So if you want to know what your load is for that appliance. Now, again, it's not setting your peak. You have to run that constant load for the full 15 minutes to make that peak. I mean, does that everyone understand that? But yeah, if you want to turn one appliance on at a time and run that over there, and then you'll know, oh, yep, my dishwasher pulls this, my dryer pulls this, my hot water heater is going to pull this, just so you can educate yourself on what your house, your thumbprint, your house is going to do.
Set everything on the timer to only run 12 minutes.
You shave off at yeah. What is it? So 13 minutes worth of running?
Say 10%.
10%, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
A lot more work. You have your dryer on.
Yes.
So instead of putting it on when it starts at 15 minutes, since you're doing it from like 15 to 30, should you start it like halfway between so it can go on one 15-minute period and go on the other?
Okay, so what you're doing is you're splitting the load up between periods. But I mean, if you really, really want to work hard, you can do that. But you're talking $3-4 here in the difference of really trying to do that. Is it worth your time to save $4? So $3.75.
It would say.
Do what?
Yeah.
It does work. And then again, the interval, just so everyone understands, we start at midnight. 12:15 is an interval. It is on the every 15 minutes that your clock is. It's not some mysterious number out there.
And it's not a rolling 15 minutes. So we're not looking at your highest 15 minutes. It's those 15-minute blocks. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think there's been some confusion that it might be a rolling 15 minutes. Looking for your highest 15 minutes. It's not. It's those 15-minute blocks.
But did they say over there in the other room that in those 15-minute blocks, it's the top 3 of the day?
No, what you're confusing is Ozark Electric as a whole. Our peak demand is the top 3 in the summer and the top 3 in the winter that we pay for annually as a peak demand. And it's a 12, so we pay for it annually as a co-op collectively for a 12-month period. So yours is month by month, quarter hour by quarter hour.
But on that quarter hour, so every quarter hour we may be paying a different rate?
No.
So whatever your highest quarter hour is, that's going to be your peak demand.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Most people set their demand within the first 3 or 4 days of the month, and that's just going to sit there.
And the thing to think about on your demand is, I think people think that their demand, the chart on their demand, and this is something we're working on, and this is a software deal and it's a bandwidth deal. Those of you, like somebody asked, I can't remember if we could get instantaneous to understand, to see what it is. We have a bandwidth issue. You put 37,000 meters on a piggyback signal on the wire. We don't have enough. There's not enough room for all the information to get down the wires. Okay, so we just don't have the capacity for that kind of bandwidth. But your KW demand probably, most likely, does not look like this. Okay, it probably does not look like that. In a, you don't go, well, heck, on Tuesday 9/6. I don't know if that's right or not. But I set my demand of 10 kW, right? Your demand probably looks more something like this. Number one, you probably are never a 0, most likely, because you've probably got a clock running, or even if it rolls over on midnight, you probably got a clock running or something. So it probably comes in here, and then the sun comes up and you get up and start doing things, right? And it comes up here and it's doing this throughout the day. Maybe this, it's coming, and then the sun goes back down, right? And then the next day, and it's moving. But it's not like I ran this up and now, because I hear that a lot. I ran it up and one 15-minute deal got me. Well, you're paying on that top 15, but your demand signal probably looks more something like this. It's probably floating around close to whatever you're setting. It may have moments when it's down, but overall your demand's looking something like this, okay? So don't think of it as a 15-minute, you got me. It's not that way. It's something more like this in your home. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I've got an empty house, no one living there. I shut the circuit breakers off, no electricity at all. Will there be a demand charge on my bill?
Not unless you have a short circuit or something below that meter. If you've got something below this meter that's coming in contact with something, whether it be an ant or
You're not turning it off. Shut everything off.
Okay, so like right now, this lamp's on. We got 0.064 going. You shut all these breakers off. Zero. If it's been like that
Will there be a demand charge? That's
no.
that's what we're showing you.
For a full 30-day period, and it's zeros, you haven't turned the thing on, there is nothing for us to charge you with. You didn't ask anything from us. It should be zero.
But you still have facilities. Facilities charge.
Yes.
Community demand is the same whether I'm using electricity or not, right?
And you didn't pay a demand.
Okay. That's clear.
Okay, yeah. If you didn't use it, it's 0, 0. On your bill, it should say. Now, if you register, I want you to understand this. If you look at that and you look at your bill and it has a KWH, that means some electricity went somewhere. So as soon as you take a KWH, you set a demand of some kind. Does that make sense? So I would watch both of those lines. Watch both of those lines. But yeah, if you've got it off and nothing, there's no demand. A 0 is a 0. But if you've got a meter in there, an account open with us, you're still going to have the accessibility charge there. Yes, ma'am.
So say somebody runs all their appliances 24 hours a day, would they not have a demand?
Oh yeah, they'd have a high demand.
They would have a high demand every 15 minutes?
No. Because it comes back to this.
Hey, Drew, can you repeat her question so we can all hear?
She asked if somebody ran all their appliances 24 hours a day, they would have no demand, right? No, because it's a flat line. Okay, so let's draw a bottom line here. So it's a flat line, but let's say this is 5 and 10. It's a flat line, but it's a flat line up here. So you're a 10. That would be their demand.
They turned everything on.
If they turned everything on and just left it on, it's a flat line, but it's just whatever the total what we would call total connected load. So if we add all these up and you've got all those running, that's what your demand is.
So would that be more or less than the person that runs their demand sporadically?
It would be the same demand. If they're both 10, so let's just draw another one. So if the person below them looks like this, there's their 10, right? And they never hit it again. They're both a 10. But this person is going to pay the 8.9 cents on everything that's over and above what this person's paying. Does that make sense? So let's just say this person is 1200 kWh. They're both 10s. The bottom person is a 10, and we'll just say our system average of a 1200. This person is a 10 and a 1400.
Well, yeah, they use more usage.
Right.
Yes.
But they put the same pressure on the system. So they're covering their additional cost because we all are taking our share of the pie of the KW because that's what we have, that separate piece. But they're taking their KWH is over and above, so their bill is more.
But the demand charge would be the same.
The demand charge is the same, absolutely.
Another question.
Sure.
Is the demand based on individual homes, or is it based on when you need electric?
She asked, is the demand based on individual homes or when you need more? The answer to that question is both yes. Every home is setting its own demand. Every meter is setting its own demand. So whenever this person sets their peak at 10, they're a 10. It doesn't matter what their neighbor down the street does. They're just a 10.
Does it matter what the company, the co-op is doing? If the co-op is experiencing more demand and we're on that demand schedule, is it costing?
No. So what happens is, I think I understand your question. So whenever you set a peak demand at your house, okay? And we're in what I would call a peak demand situation. That's when we get the emails as board directors. They say, hey, we've got a really high demand today. We're watching it closely. So what happens is, probably what's happening is everybody is peaking close to the same time, okay? And so what happens is, KMO takes that big number. If we all peak together, that's what sets our peak billing determinant on our demand. So then all of a sudden the co-op has a demand that we're going to pay all of us collectively. That's this $1.44 million, right? That's the number that we're going to be stuck collecting for the next 12 months to try to cover the demand if we're all peaking together at a certain time. And one of the things to think about, I know everybody was, because it was said over there, it's like, well, if her demand is high this time and mine's high this time, isn't there extra electrons? But there's also the same thing is, we pay almost $15 a kW as a co-op on the demand. So that's calculated into how we collected that money. So we ran all the models to be able to see, okay, how can we collect the 1.44 million and make it work where it is fair and it's not an over collection feature, where it's actually a feature that collects roughly what the co-op is paying. Yes?
Is this new rate designed to lower the KMO peak, or is it just designed to collect the 1.44 without having any impact?
So that's a great question. So it's both. It's both, Randall.
How much is it?
Okay.
How much is the decrease?
Okay. So here's the thing. I want to ask you a question. You got children, Randall?
Adults.
Okay. But when they were kids, right? You had no kids, and then you had another kid.
And all hell broke loose.
Right? Well, did you lower your food budget?
No.
Okay, well then you had another kid. Did you lower your food budget?
No.
Okay, so that's what we're up against. I wished I knew. Tori may know off the top of her head. I've seen the number. I think it's right around 400 meters. And I may be wrong about that. If anybody's in the room that remembers, do you remember how many meters we added, Colby? I think we added 400 meters in the last 12 months. And I say all that to say that if our system average is a 10 kW, that means we added 4,000 kW to our system just through a system average of adding meters. We're not a static system, right? We also have industry that's growing on our system. We have poultry that's growing on our system. So for us to say, hey, how much did we lower our demand? It's tough for us to quantify that and to say, hey, there's a number that we dropped it by doing what we did because our system's growing. It's like saying that, because I'm a farmer, I'll use cattle as an example. When I buy a 4-weight steer and I throw him out in the field, I can feed him a lot less than I can when he's an 8-weight when I'm getting ready to take him to town. But that doesn't mean that I'm wasting or that I'm not watching my food ration. That doesn't mean that we're not collectively all trying to bring it down, because it goes back to what I said earlier, that if we can drop our KW collectively, and if we all drop it where that 4,000 KW that we're talking about comes in and keeps us level, and we didn't actually drop it, but we stay level, what we've told Associated is that we don't need any more assets running. What we've told KMO is we're not adding any load, so our demand stays the same, right? So we've dropped it, even if our demand stays the same, but collectively on our average we've dropped it. So we're going to have to look at an average before we know.
I hope that's what your model shows and takes into account, because we're going to a lot of effort on this demand, and hopefully it will impact the demand that we have to pay for.
Sure.
The 1.44 million.
The thing to remember is that you can drop your personal demand, and if you drop your personal demand, effectively you're dropping the KMO demand.
Only if I drop it at the time of the KMO peak.
No, incorrect. Incorrect. 100% incorrect. It's based on your 15 minutes in that 30-minute day.
But the KMO peak is at a different time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's right.
I see what you're saying. But if we're all watching it collectively, yes. But we also have, I don't know if Steve wants to go into it. Steve's more astute maybe than I am. Yeah. On more how, because we have base billing demand and we have peak demand.
And I've looked at the bill for this question. There's two demand features: base demand.
Correct. One's 10 and one's 5.
Those are with some discounts. That probably won't happen this next year. So those numbers are probably going to go up.
Okay.
But if we reduced our demand, through any of this, then maybe we don't have additional dollars. But the way the base demand is figured, is we have 25 substations. Ozark Electric, KMO has 25 substations that we use our power on. Ozark Electric has. Those substations are looked at every hour. They're on an hourly demand, and they are stored every hour of the billing period. And then every substation, whatever their peak was for that month, they're all added together, and that is the base demand for that month.
So we collected all those in one slide. Basically, they all occur like 1,800 hours.
Not all the peak ones did.
Is that correct?
But I went back and looked at the base, because the peak ones are coincidental peak, which means that it's all 25 substations all at the same time. The base demand are non-coincidental. So each one of those 25 substations is looking at a different number. Those numbers are, one of them might be an hour on a particular day at a particular time.
Do they vary a lot?
They went from 9 o'clock, the last bill that I looked at from last month, there was one substation that was at 9 o'clock, one of them that was 11 o'clock, a couple of them at 3 o'clock, and the rest of
1.3,
them
it's rising a little bit because it's heating up.
So to answer your question, it should, in theory, if everybody's doing their part, and again, it's a pain point, the demand is a pain point, the demand charge is a pain point, that ultimately should, if now that we all have the ability to look and see exactly what demand is doing, to try to drop that down, to try to lower those
So that was a 1.5 this year.
Also, the non-coincident demand.
Right. Yeah, but we left this on for 15 minutes.
One more question. Is this whole rate?
And we haven't, the kilowatt hour hasn't changed either. But if we were to run this for a solid hour,
we have it's roughly a 10% revenue.
what I was getting at is, if you run this for a solid hour, you would see 1.5 kWh.
That's the reason why we know that not every, and we ran all the models and we went back and we didn't make up numbers. We used old bills when nobody cared what demand was, and we had Corey put them in a spreadsheet, and we had it calculated what it was going to be, and we could see the revenue that it was going to make. And so it was roughly a 10% increase in revenue.
That's even with a bell curve to say that so many are going to be down here. The majority of the membership is going to pay. It's going to be at an average bill.
Anytime you hear the word watts, divide that by 1,000, and that tells you what's per house. If you have a 1,000 watt line,
we tried to be fair to everybody across the board on that.
if you're heating something up in it for 15 minutes,
Can't more radio stations every
but you're
hour?
only going to run it for
Why can't you read our meters every hour?
We could.
Why
You
don't
can
you?
do, you can do it. And if you go research demand, residential demand, all of them will say they're either 15, 30, or an hour. I mean, you can do it on whatever time frame you want. However, I really think that when you really research it,
the kilowatt divided by
if you did it out, if we did ours at an hourly rate, they would be about 40% more. Your number would be 40% less.
This is the number we're still trying to accommodate.
So
It makes sense, though. He's saying it would be more.
No, I'm saying the rate would be higher at an hour.
No, because if I start a load of clothes, my washer is gonna go for at least 35, 40 minutes. So you're gonna hit that thing every 15 minutes on the cycle. Okay, then I wait 30 minutes after it quits and I start my dryer, so at least 50 minutes to dry those clothes. There again, you're hitting my dryer 3 times while it's running.
Yeah, but we're only collecting it once in that 15-minute period.
It doesn't matter though, that's what I'm saying. If my dryer's going, I got a couple of freezers running, I got a refrigerator running. Say I go take a shower, it goes dirty. Then my hot water heater kicks on, and the well pump kicks on. Then it goes up to 10, 11. You know,
so your deal, and that was we looked at that really. But if your KW demand on a 15-minute period was a 10. On a average hourly would be about 40%, would be about 14. I mean, it would go down to a 6. So for us to try to collect this amount of money, it would have gone from $3.75 up to $5 and something. Now when you do that, you can still get the same amount of money, but you aren't as accurate on who's using what. So the closer that time, the more accurate you can tell who's doing what or who's putting the most stress on the grid.
And here's a great example of that. Okay, I've actually got two bills. Okay, and this one is a bill of a seed cleaning company. Okay, and the other is a bill of a residential house that's just up the street from it. Okay, so this is a great example. This is the house thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So the house is a 6.9 kW house, okay, with 1,078 kilowatt hours, and it's $121.93 for that house, because they're a 6.9 kW. If they were a 12.5 cent kW, it'd be $134.75. That'd be a straight kWh on that. Now, the seed cleaning plant is just up the road, and this will, remember, this one is 6,930, 1,078 kilowatt hours, okay? This bill is a 28.33 kilowatt hour. 28.33 kilowatt hour. It is roughly four times the KW, the demand. He puts 4 times the pressure. If he had to get a generator to run that place, he would need a generator 4 times the size of a house generator. And it's only 770 kilowatt hours. Now, under the old system, that person would have paid less, even though it took way more pressure, took way more generation, and way more infrastructure to do it. That person paid $106 on the demand and $68 only on the KWH. So $174.77. Where if it was a straight KWH, it would have been $96.25 on the straight KWH at 12.5 cents. So I say all that to say that this guy would have rolled up the street to the lady and said, "Hey, thanks for paying my electric bill." Right? I mean, that's the principle behind it. But that's because we're capturing the 15-minute period, and you know, the math doesn't lie on me. Anybody else, any questions? These are all really good. Yes, sir.
Did we get electricity from those windmills in the corner of the county?
No, I don't think so.
It's strictly liver.
Yeah,
that replaced their Asbury.
That replaced Asbury plant, the windmill. There is some windmills on the associated asset list, but those are not them.
So, well, I know I set my demand, the timing of that doesn't matter, right? Correct. For my demand. But since we're trying to collect that, whatever the system demand is you have, which I assume that's going to be adjusted every year, you get that what we're doing, right? But it would still be advantageous to shift my demand to a lower system demand time, right? To the system as a whole. Which would reduce the 1.44.
We would have reduced it last year.
I think the caveat in that is the non-coincident demand, the base billing demand. Right. That's the piece that because the whole system doesn't peak together. So there is a time when they measure a whole system peak, right? But that doesn't mean every substation is peaking. And so whenever that happens, so if you're trying to play fair, and part of our deal was too, we didn't want to pick winners and losers on the time of use. And so I hear what you're saying, but the fact that non-coincident does shift around, what we would probably do is if we had a time of use, we would probably shift that demand out of that time into a different time. Because that's
well, yeah, I'm not talking about the time of use, just within the current system, right? So, you know, if I hit my peak at 3
o'clock in the afternoon when it's 105 degrees out, it's probably going to be a peak for a lot of people, right? Sure. Which is going to be consistent, probably, right? But if you switch and I make adjustments, I peak at 3 a.m., right? A lot of people do that, when we flatten out that peak, which would reduce that number, which reduces the all.
Sure. Right. And I think that's an education piece, you know. But
well, it's still not advantageous to me immediately, individually, to shift that to a different time, a lower system peak time during the day, middle of the afternoon, while that's running. In the long run, the more do that, then we reduce that system peak time which reduces that number, which then allows our demand charge to go down. Right?
And I think one of the things to think about too is that by educating people not to power their power, that if we're in a peak event and people have been in a habit of, well, we're home, we might as well do laundry anyway. Well, now we're training the individual like, hey, my AC's on, I know it's going to be on, it's hot outside, I'm not going to water the yard right now and run my well, and I'm not going to cook and go ahead and do the laundry. You know, so we should organically get some of that in.
Right, but not only not stacking, but because sometimes you can't avoid that, right? Because it's going to happen. Sure. So we're talking about run the well and do washing your sites. But if you could shift so that peak happens, right?
But then you start, everybody did it, everybody thought like that.
Well, you may move your whole
peak.
Right. But we all know it.
But there are, if you look at the people that are trying to do that, in those contracts that you sign as a member, do a special thing, you want to turn 20, you're going to do yourself pretty often. So, you have to offer to everybody, so whoever does it. If everybody did it, you put them in there, then in this contract it says that the co-op can come back and shift the fee so that that's no longer outside the fee. That's what it means.
What he's saying is basically the billing peak is going to still be the billing peak. So if we shift it and all of a sudden
I'm not talking about going to a peak bill. I'm just saying within the current bill.
Oh yeah, I mean I think you'll see.
Because what really matters is the 1.44 number, right?
Right,
and that's based upon two things. One being system fee. Right?
The thing to remember though, the biggest chunk of this number is the non-coincident peak. It's the biggest chunk.
It's a $10 charge.
It's a $10.23 charge.
But the other one only happens, it is a smaller number. Coincidental peak is a smaller number. If you look at all of them, you have to during that day, during that weather. But whenever KMO charges that extra $5 or there's that $10 on the base, then there is no, to be fair, and that's maybe harp on being fair too much, I know. But the things that you have to go through to go back to that substation to find out if that was if your peak was coincidental with one on the substation, or if your peak was not on that. I mean, you can take it as far as you want to go.
And I think in the future, and maybe we've done this before, but I know I feel like a couple years ago, in the summertime, maybe 2 years ago, there was something put out. We had a couple of assets offline. There was a scheduled outage with associated, and then there was a problem with the generator in the summertime. And Ozark sent out a deal, hey, if you could reduce your load, because there was a bulletin. And I think in the future you may see some of that come from our communications team to say, hey, everybody, if you can, we're getting close to our peak, let's try to limit what we're doing. I think that's something to be willing to play, to your point, if everybody would say, hey, I'm committed to helping lower this number, that's exactly what we want. I mean, and honestly, like these meetings, we've got member involvement that we've never had now. And so now if people are passionate and excited about the co-op, you know, you're never excited about it until your electricity's off or your bill goes up, you know, but that's the two things that get things going. I think luckily we had to raise the bill and it wasn't a huge outage that got everybody excited maybe, but now we've got everybody's attention, and to your point, it's something that maybe they're watching what we're putting out more now, and if there is a time where we need to reduce the peak, we can probably get that out in the membership and be more cognizant of what's happening.
Because you mentioned before that demand was growing faster
Yeah,
than
it is.
kilowatt hours. So doing something with that demand seems to be really important.
Sure.